Order the meeting of the Skokie Public Library Board of Trustees on Wednesday, July 9th, 2025 at 6:31. Any comments from observers? The administration of oath of office of appointed trustee. We have Board Secretary Mary Petruba, who will administer the oath of office for appointed trustee Lula Colbert.
Step over there. So I state your name. I, Lula Colbert, having been appointed to the office of Skokie Library Trustee,
having been appointed to the office of Skokie Library Trustee
in the village of Skokie,
in the village of Skokie,
in the county of Cook Aforesaid,
county of Cook Aforesaid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Skokie Library Trustee
of the office of Skokie Library Trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my
Yeah. Susie, do we give this to you then to use this? Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Mary.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular and closed meetings of June 11th, 2025. Questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular and closed meetings of June 11th, 2025? Second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that is 5-2. Motion passes. Okay, next item on the agenda is the executive director's report.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to see all of you. Hope you're staying cool indeed. So the first thing I want to mention is that we decided to make some changes to our HR team structure. So without going into all the basically all three members of our HR team are still here at the library, but they're just kind of rotating a little bit and shifting roles to maximize their own strengths, their interests, and their abilities. So Chris Foreman will be our HR manager moving forward, and so when we present changes to the personnel code or discuss personnel matters, he may be attending the board meeting. So the new art has been installed, so I think that some of you have already commented on that and seen it, but I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that in our report. And also, more importantly, the Thursday, July 17th, next Thursday, there's an art reception. I hope all of you can make it. You know, heard from Mary already. It'd be great to see all of you. We're expecting a large group of people. I think a lot of guests have a lot of interest in the artists themselves, so it should be fun. If you are planning to attend, please let us know so we can look for you. We'll have any tabs for you. Juneteenth Community Unity Celebration was fantastic. I think the staff who were there, especially Director Phillips, who was really part of the planning team. Others like Booster and Holcomb and Beba were there to help self portraits as part of our Skokie Yearbook project. I think that was a great event. And there as well. Mayor Tennis recently elected mayor of Skokie. Mayor Tennis visited the library. She's actually someone who we're very familiar with due to her work in her prior work in the village. So I've known her for many years. So I didn't really need to show her around the library. She knew whatever it looked like and everything, but it was good to just spend an hour with her and Nancy. Just walk around the building and just kind of update her on what was happening, some new services, the studio. So this is a good time to establish that connection. Looking forward to initiatives. And the last, lastly, I just want to mention the strategy retreat that we had. So just to remind all of you with our current strategic plan, we have current priorities that are in place, and so every year we'll have a retreat to review those priorities, talk about our progress with those priorities, and also just start thinking about what we can do outcomes related to those priorities. So it was just a good event. All the staff who were at the room today, most of them were at the event. So if any of you want to share anything. So overall, I'm really happy with the strategic progress that we're making. I'm happy with the update and forward to work with our priorities, and I think the police are sort of working. If you have any questions about any of this, I'm happy to share more information.
I think my only question or comment is just with the changes to the HR structure. I know in like the Dropbox files, there's typically like an org chart or something. It'd be great to get an updated org chart just to see how everything kind of flows.
But we'll double check.
Okay, and I don't know, I remember in the, and maybe it's due to like memory size or possibly difficulty in just keeping up with it due to constant changes, but I think there used to even be a picture file of like staff in there where, are we still doing something like that or no?
We're not updating that really.
Yeah, we are. We just have to.
Okay,
Okay.
because I like that, because when I see people in the library, I have a reference, you know, I'm a very visual person, so I'm like, oh yeah, I saw that person, I would like that to be updated too, that would be great.
We'll add to that soon.
Thanks.
Oh, there's a long list of them,
Oh,
but I can share that with you. If you look at the strategic update that was shared a couple months ago, you'll see under each initiative. It's a mix of some managerial staff, supervisors, and some staff. But it's just a mix of people based on whatever the topic is.
Any other questions? The next item on the agenda is the approval of the June 2025 disbursement report. Questions or comments?
Question. When it says Skokie Public Library on the disbursement report, what does that mean?
Yeah, it usually means that, yeah, Allison, I was like, Allison. you want to share a little?
It's usually like a reimbursement,
Oh,
a
okay.
petty cash reimbursement, so we refill our funds that we reimburse staff under $20.
Kind of like paying ourselves back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I'll go, I had a question under capital, there was a $24,000 expense for Dell marketing, and I know when I had asked about it, you'd indicate it was for new computers that were recently purchased in the public computer area, so like, how often are those typically replaced? Or how old were the ones that were there, I guess, or, I don't know.
I was gonna say 7 years,
Okay.
possibly even a couple more because of COVID. We got a little off the cycle that we
Okay.
had been on of replacing
What's the
things, so-
typical cycle then for computer?
That's a little bit past.
Okay.
Usually where we would replace them. So yeah, a little more aggressive than that, like 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
It depends on the type of computer and what we need it to do, obviously, and the computing power that we need. Some computers, if they're just internet browsing and like word processing kind of, or the Outlook suite, it requires very little, and we're getting a lot of life out of our computers. But others, like some of the equipment that in the studio or for our CME team, we might need to try to build our department does a great job.
And then what do we do with our old equipment?
Depends, if they're still usable, we might use them. Sometimes it's like a kind of a domino effect, right? So we might use those to for say catalog solution or something. Those, right? Or sometimes if we're not going to use them at all, logical ways to responsibly discard them or try to find a local organization that might.
I had a question. Under technology, the company Matter Hackers kind of caught my eye. What is that for? I'm assuming prevention / hoping prevention.
Matter Hackers was for a couple of 3D printers, actually.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I heard that and I was just like,
Oh, like.
Oh, nobody got hacked.
the
Yeah.
cybersecurity?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
yeah. I mean, there are often charges for related to cybersecurity for that.
Any other questions? Looking at 6280 request for 18,298.96, and I see it also up in 6250. Same company for several charges there.
Yeah, so Process is a vendor that we use for a lot of different. So the one in 6080 is for an online subscription. Subscription for like the Tribune, access to the Tribune archives. So it tends to be like a newspaper type of. The tech one. Okay, so that's for Syndetics, which is so when you look at our library catalog online and you see like the cover image and the reviews and like the content that's populating that, that's coming from subscription. It kind of feeds it provides kind of a lot of the content for the
Do you know like what our user rate is for this request for
the
like the
newspapers.
online, periodicals?
I'll have to see
It's more
here.
than, it's more than the periodicals. It's Chicago Tribune Historical, and Ancestry Library Edition. So those are our three most highly used databases. So frequently to take advantage of discounts, library vendors like to bundle their digital products. So it can sometimes be hard to tease out the individual items, but they're among the most used.
Out of all of our online subscriptions?
Out of our online databases, yes. But typically online databases run anywhere from, there are some that we pay less than $1,000 for to a few that we pay more than $10,000 for. They're extremely expensive.
Just wondering what the user rate is, and look at like
Cost per use.
cost per use.
I mean, unfortunately with these, Historical Tribune, Chicago Tribune, and Ancestry, if we were to remove those, I mean, there's really not much negotiation we can do. Those are heavily used by staff, by patrons, people use their minds.
No, I'm not looking at it, I just am
Yeah.
interested to see like what, when we look at what the breakdown is for the
Yeah.
amount of users. when we're looking
You
at-
can't really break it down by users per se because of the privacy settings we have for Easy Proxy. So when you put in your library card number into a database, all it does is it checks against our catalog that you do have, that you're a Skokie resident and you have a Skokie library card. Then from there, it goes to a proxy server and it becomes anonymous. So we can determine how many sessions, we can determine how many articles have been pulled. Sometimes we can determine views. Those are sometimes counted differently by the vendors, but there's no way for us to tell 30 cardholders use this month or 300 cardholders used it this month. That's different from the products that use an API with our system, typically things like Libby, Hoopla, Canvy. The API works differently where we can look at that like barcode number and it doesn't become anonymous. So that's a good thing for statistics.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the greatest thing for privacy.
I hear a motion to approve the June 2025 disbursement report. Seconded. Discussion. Vote. Mary?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, so on to the approval of the consent agenda.
Sorry, I'm still trying to figure out what we're going to, what page number.
Consent agenda, it starts on page 17. The disbursement report is on, so
I just had an overall comment on like gate count and engagement, especially over the month of June. I like if you look at the numbers, just overall, and I think it's even cited here as a main bullet where, 24% less traffic compared to other, on Saturday, and the gate count being down compared to last June. So I'm just, hopefully it's not part of a larger trend. So I'm just kind of curious what we're doing to monitor that and maybe try to figure out like what is the cause of it.
I think I think you hit it on the head, you have to monitor it.
Yeah.
And, see over a longer period of time.
Yeah. 1 month is not a pattern,
Right,
maybe,
and
but
it could be something like the weather, or, sometimes the numbers drop when, an emergency closure or something. So it really depends on kind of situation. So, but
are we still seeing that the engagement's pretty high with the summer reading program? Like there hasn't really been a big drop off with that, even due to lower traffic and circulation stuff or
Not
anything?
that I've been told or seen myself,
Okay.
it feels like the library is very active, that it's always full. People are using our services.
Okay.
Did I see that ebook was up from last June? So that could also, people don't always need to come in to do ebooks.
That's right.
So,
And as you see more digital use, it could
Yeah.
result in less visits. But we provide these reports and everyone, in order to kind of,
Yeah, like when I just looked at youth collection in particular, when you see something like, audio down 22%, and then the overall circulation, especially since we've seen such steep increases in children, and then you think summer reading program in particular with kids, so that was kind of the flag for that. for me.
Yeah, that was I'm surprised. And people are unable to further, right?
You hit the nail know had.
Yeah, no, we have to wait and see, right?
We don't know if it's a pattern or if it's related to game count. I will say that the numbers are a little bit down on most of the categories in kids. So we can't just say it's picture books.
Right.
Or nonfiction. So that tends to indicate that it's something different.
Yeah.
That's affecting it, and perhaps that gate count, I don't know, if it was the heat.
Be my guess, honestly.
Yeah,
We'll just say, well,
or some sort of different pattern.
Also in regards to the gate count, while there was less traffic on Saturdays, the traffic is up on Mondays.
exactly.
So anecdotally, what I've heard, folks tell me, oh, I booked the room for the library to have our retreat here for community partners and institutions within the community doing some of their business work here. So I would be interested to know what the room reservations look like for community-based organizations or employers or schools in the area to see if that's part of the reason the gate count is up on that weekday, to see if that's something we could lean into as well.
Yeah, about that. So I looked at it again. I don't think we've really done a full analysis of our meeting. Like, the
Yeah.
breakdown of like what type of organization. What type of cities were. We have that data, right?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to provide that, next week.
Can I also just say, like, when we're looking at just a month, in 2024, there was one more Saturday in June than there was in 2025. And in 2025, there's one more Monday than there was last year. Because like, that's something we'll often see too, if there's a week off from story time, it makes the whole month look weird. And it's just the way the days fall sometimes.
It's also true that in June this year, for 2 days, the west entrance was closed while we redid the concrete and it was really hot. So I'm wondering if some people came, parked in the lot and said, I'm not walking around to the other door. Because the gate count's really only down about 400 people for the entire month. So it's a blip, but it's not extreme.
Catalog searches were down though too, which I find that so
Interesting.
curious, you know what I mean? Like, because even if you were doing more digitally, you would still likely look it up in the
A lot of
catalog to
catalogs
find
are
it,
still
you know.
for staff as well.
You what?
A lot of that number is staff.
Okay.
So again, it's sort of hard to parse out which actual piece, but if you don't have Saturdays are very busy. That could have a little bit of a.
That one Saturday.
Close for a day sometimes too.
It is, yeah, but, I mean, you're seeing that there's so many factors. Really to say anything's come. Yeah.
I think it might have been.
Yeah.
And it seems like it was revised because I noticed after, I saw you emailed Richard questions after the meeting, but what I noticed after that was they must have told each other, so I'm wondering if something.
What page?
Page 17.
That was a total.
So,
Oh. So
Wait,
the 5911 is available fund for expenses and then you have to back the expenses. So this is an extra long financial statement sheet. Usually like it's 2 pages, but it's pages. So if you go to page 2, you'll see kind of like 3/4 of the way down.
Yeah, if you subtract from page 1, the $15 million amount, subtract the cash expense on the far right, that gets you to the new total available. Because I did the same number crunching too. I would like to double check everything too. I was like, oh, okay. It
You know,
matches
I
for
think
me.
going up because in the past there was like 2 So,
Because that's what I was
yeah,
wondering.
yeah, it kind of like shifted down.
That's why it's the same.
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the state of the state of the library collection and ebook market.
Our animal, we already heard from today, is our Director of Access Services. So I think a couple of months ago, there were some questions about ebooks and also just collection in general. So I asked Animal to join us today and share what we want to share.
Sure, so some of this, I think also was based on questions from the packet last month that had the Access annual report, and always in the Access annual report, I always put in a little state of the collection piece that talks not just about what Access staff is doing, but what we are seeing from our collection. So just to give you a little bit of context, and I think I provided a little bit of this in the report. For a library of our size, 1.8 million circulation is enormous. In fact, it is so enormous that when Susie put those numbers into the state report this year, it came back as an error. Are you sure you have that right? So it is very, very robust. It is robust both because we have such an engaged community. Also, we have such a healthy budget, which we thank everyone for. And it becomes, a little bit of sometimes a chicken and egg, when you're able to provide for resources, then people check out those resources. And it's a very happy resolution. That said, we don't chase circulation. We're always looking at having as broad of a collection as possible. We look to our resources selection policy, which the board reviews every 2 years. I think that's next up this coming March. In terms of our criteria for selecting materials, our criteria for drawing materials, community interest and community needs, and making sure we have as healthy a collection as possible. So that's what we focus on in Access, not the numbers as much as the health of the collection and what we're seeing and what that tells us. Generally though, some of the trends that we've observed the last few years are actually pretty consistent throughout libraries across the country. Most libraries have seen high increase in youth print circulation. To a degree where it's superseded adult circulation. That's been pretty consistent. All libraries, not surprisingly, have seen a decrease in audiovisual materials, physical audiovisual materials, but that has started to taper off. It's less of a steep dive now, and we're seeing both probably because of some digital divides, but also because of the overwhelm of streaming. We're seeing some tapering off of that here. And again, as well, that's been really a national trend. That's what we're hearing from other libraries as well. The other big issue that we see nationwide, and it's top of mind for most libraries, is the ebook, e-audiobook, digital situation, and I call it a situation because it is something that is growing in interest, but the costs of those materials are becoming increasingly prohibitive for libraries, particularly libraries with very small budgets, but it's really affecting all libraries. So basically, most ebooks and audiobooks, particularly ebooks, libraries get them in essentially a subscription model. So we purchase a lease for typically 2 years, a year or 2 years. In some cases, it's a number of checkouts, not number of years. And then once it expires, then we have to rebuy the items at the same price. And it's usually about 3 to 4 times the amount that is the retail price. So a $55 ebook from Macmillan costs, or we can get that for 24 months. Only one person can check out a copy at a time of that title. And then at the end of the 2 years, if we want it again, we have to buy it again for $55. So it's extremely prohibitive for libraries, cost-wise. There have been many initiatives through the years, and there's ongoing initiatives. One I'm involved in with the Urban Library Council, and trying to talk to publishers, trying to talk to vendors, and trying to come up with a better solution for all parties with regard to the purchasing and the costs of this. So one thing I've always said about the ebooks is that we could literally use our entire $1 million budget for collections on ebooks and audiobooks. I can spend 10 minutes ordering books for the week on Libby, and I'll spend $6,000 if I wanted to. I don't do that, but if I wanted to. So part of it is the balance of making sure that we have enough to fulfill needs, but also that we're cognizant of the fact that the majority of our cardholders and users don't check out ebooks. The majority check out books, and what we can do to balance the digital and the physical. Again, this is the hottest topic in libraries. And it's something that hopefully we will be able to find a happier resolution. But because of that, you may have heard that Chicago made some limits to their digital. Evanston made some limits to their digital.
When you say limits, what do you mean? Do you mean on like on your side, on the purchaser side, or by users with how many
Users.
ebooks they can check out or something?
Check out some things.
So is it like an annual checkout limit or a month, or how does
No,
that work?
it's by time.
By time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for, I think, well, I'm not sure Chicago's or Evanston's. Do you know Evanston's? It is now, I think it's 5.
Yeah, it's
5 checkouts.
it's 5 checkouts, 3 holds.
3 holds for Libby. And for Hoopla, it's different. Hoopla is a different model. Hoopla is a pay-per-use model. So actually, that's even
I was
worse.
gonna ask, because I know someone, because when I do I like digital books, you know, and I check them out, especially when I travel, because I want to carry the big thing.
Yeah.
But I like using my Kindle versus an iPad when I read, and I notice, depending on the service that I use, obviously, but I noticed that like one ebook will have 2 different options, and I never understood
Yeah.
why. So could you walk us through that? And like,
So basically for Hoopla, let me just put the Hoopla aside.
Yeah.
Hoopla is only available through a browser or an app.
yes.
So you can't get a Hoopla book on a Paperwhite or a Nook, or a black and white Nook.
Yeah.
So those are, we're charged per checkout. So anywhere from, some things are 99 cents, some things are $4 if you do a binge pass, like the Homer Plus binge pass on Hoopla. The average is a little over $2 now at checkout. There, you made a face, that's my face every day.
It's,
when I
no,
look
that's
at
exactly, when you think about,
Yeah.
like going back to the cost of like the physical book, and thinking, I don't know what your average
Correct.
circulation is per title on
Yeah,
average, but I imagine that $2 would
Yeah.
quickly eat into what you would pay for a physical copy. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, physical hardbacks, you know, it varies by publisher, it varies by age range.
yeah,
But it's usually anywhere between $15 to $20 that we pay for.
and you have that book until basically,
Yes.
and versus
Yes.
$2.
Yes, yeah.
You have 6
Yeah.
people check it out, you're already equivalent to the price that you would have paid for the other book.
That is correct.
Okay,
So for Libby, and Hoopla is a subscription model for us as well. Like we get what we get and we don't get upset, in the sense that they have made license deals with the publishers and with the movie studios, the distributors, and then it appears to us in Hoopla. Libby, we actually select the items that are in Libby. With the exception of a couple of subscription models in Libby, we have a subscription of romance novels that we get like a bundle for a set amount, and then the Libby magazines, we don't select those, they're all there, or if they're removed, you know, we don't control that piece. But the books and the audiobooks, we actually select for the library, and we determine how many copies we buy, and we determine how many we might withdraw, again, or not renew the license of after it's expired, et cetera. So for those, historically, the different versions, most books on Libby are all usable on your Kindle, on your Paperwhite or Oasis or, yeah. The formats are Kindle format. There's also an EPUB format, so that's for e-readers that aren't Kindles. So your Nooks, your Kobos, again, black and white only. We're not talking about things where you read through an app. We're talking about the ones that you just download it and read it in black and white or EPUB. There's also a selection there of mostly older titles that are mostly out of copyright titles that are still PDF, which again, that can be read on your Kindle as well. But if you have a Kindle, 99% of the time, you can check out anything on Libby. If you have a Kobo, if you have a Nook, if you have Black and White Reader, you can check those things out on Libby. If you're using the Libby app on your phone or your iPad or what have you, you can check the items out. Once in a while, there's something that's missing a format. In those cases, just let us know, because it's usually just a technical error on their part, so we put in a ticket to Overdrive and the company that owns Libby, and then we make that update.
So fascinating. I'm sure there's data, or maybe not, is there data that shows like the types of books of people that, how do I word this, like books that are more frequently checked out via ebook versus like concrete books? Like I would imagine, like, I don't know why I think this, like more historical or nonfiction books, I imagine might be more popular with physical books versus romance books might be, I don't know, like to help aid in the decision-making process about like what types, or there's just no trend.
No, because, well, yes and no. It used to be taken into account more often, but now honestly, price is taken into account most.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Because sometimes, so Stephen King, not his latest, but his penultimate book, his audiobook, one copy was $119 for one user. So regardless of how many holds we had on it, I didn't add any more because.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Even if it's wildly popular, if you buy 5 copies, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
So there are unfortunately some publishers that are a little bit tougher in terms of their pricing than others. So we tend to not get as many books from those publishers in terms of trying to add to a breadth of things than we would. Something like romance is actually tends to be less expensive all around and has dedicated readers for both. For others, the general trend is just people do prefer generally e-audio. That drives our Hoopla circulation, and that's always popular on Libby. Kids' books are less popular,
That makes sense.
which makes sense. Things like history, long books are less popular. But it's a little bit of a mix, and in terms of, because kind of our mix of how many copies we get is affected by space in the building, and it's affected by cost digitally. We have independent selectors for digital and for print. So it's a bit of a dance.
To make a comment on the kids' books, specifically with graphic novels. He's 8, so just put it in perspective, like I was already aware of the 3 to 4 times the cost using the Libby and checking books out that way versus getting a hard copy. Check out here at the library, but my son was really, he wants the book in his hand, but we've had a lot of time during the summer specifically. So I'm like, are you sure you don't want to try an ebook? So he really loves to read like one series at a time. So we were trying to get this one book and it was on hold. And I think we were 4th in line, but that really equates to like 8 weeks of not being able to read this book for 2 months. So he's like, I'm gonna wait for it. It's really a struggle as a parent when there's only one copy of that book that goes around.
So physical books, our threshold is usually 3 to 1 holds. When it goes above that, we try to get an extra copy, but we often can't right away.
He actually gave it to the ebook.
Did you like
but
it?
That's what took forever
The
to
whole
get.
run, the ebook.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Did you like the ebook though?
Yeah, he read it. I think he read it. He claims he read it. But I just want to give you that perspective because I lived it. And it's sad, like, because, you're used to coming here, you can get everything you want so quickly. And I mean, even if you put a hold on it, usually like the next week, somebody returns like their 10 books that they checked out prior week or whatnot. So it was kind of a little frustrating on
it's the nature of the public library, like there's some books that get hot and holds, and then our staff monitor that, most of it's low, they might buy more copies, but how long does it take to from like clicking the button to order extra copies to like processing and getting on the shelf?
It depends if the book is actually in stock at our vendor, then 2 weeks.
So there's a bit of time that takes too, right? We're trying to address the whole issue.
I just hope it doesn't discourage kids.
And you can always give us feedback on titles that you've seen that are powerful like that. More information. I think our selectors already are aware of.
Yeah, they get a holds report every
Yeah.
week.
But
I don't need to go to the top
Yeah.
for this.
Let's not do it out here.
I'm just saying that.
My son.
I was saying, in particular, I think you as my patrons can share feedback with us and it
I just find it like their experience.
So is this legal because it's considered a commercial license instead of like a personal license where like they can charge X amount more than a person who just walks into a bookstore? Great.
Yeah, so with books, with physical books, it's always been covered sort of under the fair use doctrine of assuming that, we get the one copy and then we own it, and then we can do whatever we want with it. From then on, most publishers have a bottom line. Many of them, unfortunately, are now owned by conglomerates that have a bottom line. And so the market has changed through the years in terms of the licensing options that have been given to libraries. With some of the publishers, there's been a misconception, I think, that libraries cut into their bottom line rather than libraries build readers and build interest in authors and books. And most people who use libraries heavily also buy a lot of books heavily. So that's, again, part of the discussions that we're trying as a profession to have with publishing companies to come up with a solution that is more amenable to both parties so that at least the publishers feel comfortable enough to continue working with libraries, but that libraries are able to actually provide the number of resources that they'd like to. Right now, I mean, very honestly, I can't do that on Overdrive, and Hoopla only works with certain publishers, so there are 4 of the major 5 publishing companies don't work. One of the majors does, and a few others, but if I want to get a Penguin Random House book for patrons, I have to do it through Libby.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember exactly when, like ebooks started exploding, but this has been like more than a decade long struggle, right, between the library field and publishing world. So this is not a new problem or a challenge, but it's something that I think there have been some gains, but not enough that we're satisfied with.
Right, I mean, if we stop giving out ebooks, I think that would also cut it to their bottom line, so.
Yes,
if
course.
they're
yeah, yeah.
interested in negotiating.
Yeah, so part of the thing too was just the pandemic, that really exploded use of the products. And, you know, part of the problems with this is, you know, we don't want to say, don't check out these books. We don't want to make you feel like bad guys for checking out the ebooks, but it's truly, it's a lot of money.
It's not the library model that makes
Yes.
sense for libraries.
Yeah.
It makes
Yeah.
sense for publishers.
Yeah, and there are some models, publisher models currently that are a little bit better, so we try to take advantage of those as much as we can. But it definitely, extraordinarily for Libby, again, because that represents a lot of the popular publishers and many titles that are on the bestseller list, et cetera. We try to focus on those, but it absolutely cuts into mid-list, it cuts into smaller books, it cuts into niche books. So we will always have many, many more copies from certain publishers in print in the library than we would online with the current models. So again, that's just some context for that. Richard asked me a question about this a few weeks ago, and I said, well, I could talk about it 10 minutes, or I could probably do a 2-hour lecture just off the top of my head.
10-part series for now.
Yeah, because every publisher has a different model.
I think you'll definitely keep doing well. Us talking about this issue.
Think about it, it goes beyond books too. I mean, think about how many other industries in particular that the library uses that went from you buy it, you own it, to now you have to lease it. There's computer software. I mean, heck, even now, I read somewhere like Hewlett Packard, you know, they were charging people for a subscription service for their ink, and if you didn't subscribe, you cannot use a printer you purchased in your home. Like, that's ridiculous, you know? So I just feel like more and more things are moving to this subscription model in order to your earlier point, to make companies more profitable. So I think,
Pay multiple times for it.
yes, think about it. I mean, pay that Microsoft license now, you know, all the time for the software, because you're not getting the hard copies anymore. It's constantly being updated.
Frustration of ours.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked I didn't hear about it before last month. When we were talking about it.
Yeah.
As a consumer, I had no idea.
Yeah, there's some legislation in a few states making through the rounds, and there's an NPR story several months ago. So you'll see blips regarding it, but it most often comes to the forefront, unfortunately, when a library has to limit what it offers. And then there has to be messaging out to patrons as to why.
And the library's the bad guy.
Most people are understanding.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, you know, just a lot of not understanding. So a lot of Evanston recently moved to a slightly different model, and a lot of people connected it to the cuts in the Institute of or the elimination of the Institute Museum and Institute of
Museum Library
Museum and
Services.
Library Services. I don't want to acronym you guys, but IMLS. And while that was certainly a terrible thing, that's not connected to what Evanston. It's not connected at all. There was another instance that I heard from someone when we limited our Hula checkouts, and this was secondhand. Laura was there, and secondhand someone said, "Well, someone's next. The library's going to charge for these books." And what did everybody love? Tell her no. We will not charge her. That's we can't. We literally can't. It doesn't work that way. But it's hard. It's confusing. It's so different than the retail model, right? It's so different than what you experience going to retail for digital.
As we try to so easy the process and like not put that friction between the patron and the actual material. Like people sometimes don't hear about it. And at some point, if this continues on this path, we will the realities of how all this works, right? Maybe it will be a video series with Annabelle, education about this.
Let me bore you.
No, but anyway.
20 models.
People won't need to know until we, like our budget and the demand, come to a point where it's not feasible to, go on without change.
Yeah, and so last fiscal year, because we had, we were a little underspent in physical, we put a credit into Libby, and we've been working off that credit to slowly go through and rebuy certain items. But it's a slow process because if I do that all at once, then they'll all come due again in a year or 2 years all at once, and I'm back in the same. So it's a little bit of a very, very long tail issue with the pandemic, because when the pandemic hit, we were at the end of our fiscal year. So we diverted a lot of funds to digital, which was great at the time, but then things started expiring at the same time a few years later. And it really, 2 years ago, it started to be an issue. And last year it was really an issue. So we're trying to do that slowly to kind of start a little bit fresh and be more mindful of it. And we're also being, frankly, a little more aggressive about removing items. We're just being less kind in terms of if something hasn't circulated a certain number of times, or if only one person has checked it out in the past year, we might not renew that license and might remove the item. So we're having to be a little bit more aggressive. Around the
Fairly an indicator of kindness for me.
I was gonna say,
I mean, that's just good weeding.
Yes, it is.
So that's okay, that's best
It is.
practice.
But again, the one of the tough things with the digital realm is that in the retail realm for digital, you can get things right away and you can get things for cheap. And so that's a bit more of a barrier, where with physical books, when you can find bookstores that are still open, or video stores, I don't know if there aren't really any anymore. There's still a sense of friction there of not everything is always there, not everything, but with digital, if you want something on Audible, subscribe or you press a button. And so that bit of that discount of, this was here before, but not here then, which is a little bit more like subscription models, Netflix, things of that nature. It's not quite, so it's really hard because, we want to educate people, but I feel like I've already bored you all with all of this, but it's a very complex situation. It's complicated.
Can I just two comments? One comment and one question. My first comment is thank you so much, because I know that so much goes into this. And I think, we as patrons, we kind of come in like, wow, look at all these books. Really, there's a lot of work and selection and time that goes into all of that. both physical content and the digital. So thank you for that, because I know
Thank
it's
you.
like staying on top of trends and all those kinds of, it just takes a lot and a big team, I know that does that, so thank you. I don't know that everybody really kind of takes a pause to think of how much effort and work that goes into that. So my question would be, when we look at the budget for access services, when we look at our collections, what is really the percentage of like that we're putting towards digital versus physical content, like physical books? Do you know like the general breakdown between that?
So physical is about twice as much.
Okay.
That's a very, very rough.
Yes, that's
estimate
fine. Okay.
because you'll see in the budget lines, physical leased, which leased is essentially up.
800 versus 456.
And that's been moving,
Yeah.
but we've actually, what we've excised more out of lately. And this is, I'm talking about careful scalpels, not hatchets,
Sure.
is from our research budget. So those are our databases.
Okay.
Leased is Libby, Hoopla, Canopy, and Naxos. Those are products that go into the leased bucket. So, I mean, that's percentage-wise far different than what it is a percentage of circulation.
Yeah, I was just looking, it's like 16 I was learning how it was like
Yes.
16-17%
Yes.
of circulation. It's just
And in
e-content.
any given
It's not
month,
much.
we're about just shy of 3,000 people in a given month using Libby, and just shy of 2,000 people in a given month using Hoopla. Now, they, of course, in many cases might be using both, and some months people don't use it, and so that's not an occasion. So it is a fraction, and that's, again, when I talked about not wanting to chase circulation, I don't think libraries really often do, but for a long time, the e-circulation is an easy thing to chase, because all you have to do is feed more content. And it will just go up. I mean, it will just continue to go up. And during the pandemic, that was especially true, particularly when we saw the continuing decline of DVDs and that circulation. I mean, that circulation for us used to be enormous. It's still incredibly healthy. It's still a lot. Even CDs, you know, music discs, we still circulate a couple thousand a month, which is bananas. But it's part of the reason for that discrepancy is the price of books, just simply that.
Do you, like, as a follow-up question, like, is there any sort of best practice for digital versus physical? Or are there, you know, any sort of, you know, guidelines for that you
In terms
follow?
of, for selection,
Yes.
it's the same. The resources policy covers every format. The only difference is that for physical, in terms of withdrawing, we have to look at space more often, because we just simply don't have enough space to continually add items without moving stuff. For digital, it's the cost is the consideration.
But overall, when you look at like trends in public libraries, for example, are there any sort of, I don't know, what you're seeing as far as percentage wise, like how much is actually going to be physical versus digital?
Most libraries spend at least half of their budget, large libraries, on digital. Yes. In Urban Library Council, which we're a part of, but we're one of the smallest libraries in Urban Library Council, they do a survey every year, and the last survey, most respondents spent half of their budget, at least half, on digital.
And are their circulation numbers similar to ours, where digital is only about 15 to 20% of the overall circulation?
I think digital is more for them.
More. Okay.
But again, we're talking about,
Might be more like 30% or something.
I mean, when we're talking about really high population.
Okay.
You know, when you get to smaller libraries, again, we're slightly unicorny in,
These are libraries with like 30 branches.
We're talking like,
Yes.
for example, like City of Chicago libraries or
exactly.
something,
exactly.
or,
Yeah,
okay.
It's really hard to.
Yeah. And smaller libraries, because of the costs of digital, they have to be far more aggressive in
Okay.
having caps on how much they allow patrons to check out high schools.
But like keep reporting that, this, you'll see it, you mostly always see it in the after service reports and. Just want to give you a snapshot of what Annabelle and her staff are wrestling with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fascinating, very much.
The next the four reports that are part of this are. But they're really just for FYI information. As you know, last month we showed annual reports. So this is, you know, you want to say, or kind of speak for themselves.
You know, in comparison to last year, we're pretty much on par with everything. As you know, the general fund, the sites and buildings, the reserve, I listed out the major projects that occurred this year. The largest being the Petty renovation. And then the balance by the reserve accounts, that's, you know, you see that on all of our monthly reporting. This is for the fiscal, so that's currently what it was on April 30. And then the bond debt service is simply just, this is our tracking for our debt payment that we paid in fiscal 25. We paid $1,201,050. So
When is that bond debt, like, when is that final, like, paid off?
oh,
It's a 20-year bond payment, so it's going to be.
Okay, I was just curious. All right.
It's like a mortgage,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Alright, what was that for?
For the renovation of the first and second floor. Renovation of the first and second floor.
and the last fund is the fine arts, which is what we started utilizing in fiscal 25. To purchase all of our beautiful artwork.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda. That's the fee distribution. Next year's bill.
On the agenda item. Yeah, this is something that this is something that in July, basically just gives us more of a complete picture of the money that we collected, but also factoring in the tax refunds that we had basically hold on or potential revenues. So this gives us a cleaner picture of what how it's prepared.
And this is really based on the levy year. So the levy year is split between fall and spring for each of our budgeted fiscal years. So that's important detail.
I want to add also that it may be a little confusing when it says prior years. But, sometimes we'll find out, but some of the refunds are processed over not just in the same year, right? And
Right.
A couple of years back, you know, right? So we're always like hearing about that continually, I guess. This is also also just for information purposes.
And the shortage over under, is that just some kind of fluctuation that happens every year?
It's the calculation of everything for that tax year and what we want to obviously. We've been very different. Things are, this basically tells us that our tax collections have been very steady. Why? There's been like a big catastrophic year. Even during the pandemic, we're initially concerned about whether or not the tax collections and the tax payments by non-property owners would be affected by what people were experiencing. But what we learned is that the property tax collection is perhaps the best revenue source that you could ask for us. People will always pay their property taxes. Yeah, it's better than sales tax, notably. Sales tax depends. Pretty awesome. It's good for us. Just a reminder that this is also for information purposes. Just gives you an idea, snapshot of where we are with any account that bears interest. Also just a reminder that the last quarter we started, Allison started putting all of the interest bearing accounts, not just the ones associated with the reserve. This is a kind of more complete picture of the interest earned on.
So I suspect there's no way I can make this as exciting as talking about ebooks, but I'm gonna try. As I mentioned in the memo, the windows on the first floor were not replaced as part of the renovation project, and they are most definitely at end of life. Some of them are older than me. So we've been working, huh?
25.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly, yes, they're 25 years old. So we've been working with SMC to develop a plan and develop a bid package. We had the bid opening last week, got some good results. So you can see in here the recommendation to work with Reliant Contract Glass Inc. to replace all of the first floor windows, with the exception of both entrances were done as part of the renovation. So the sliding doors and the glass right there. A little more detail about the schedule. I know I said it would start in the fall. We're hoping early September and then 8 to 10 weeks out from there. The plan is to start in the kids' room and then move to the teen room and then the swan sculpture area and the south courtyard, and then finish up in the MR room where we just have a couple of windows to replace. We will have somebody from SMC on site helping supervise the work. They'll be working with our building services team to make sure nobody gets into the work areas and everything is safe and cleaned up. So that is our plan, and I welcome any questions or comments and recommend that the board approve the first floor window replacement project in the total amount of $626,362.
Do you know how long each section would take? I know you mentioned the overall time.
Yeah, it varies a little. Like in kids, there are 2 whole sides of the room. So we would chunk that up and, we'll try to do the play area and then move over to the Oakton side. So I don't have an exact answer for each of those areas, but it is gonna take longer in the longer stretches.
And would those spaces be available during those times?
Probably not completely, but we're hoping we can move some things around. Obviously, we're not just gonna close off every toy for however long it takes, but if we can move some stuff around, pull some toys into the center of the room, we're gonna work with Amy and her team of public services to, keep as much going as we can while keeping everyone safe.
With the kids area and March.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Provide services in that
Will any work be done during during closed hours?
Well, they will start each morning, as soon as they can. Contractors tend to start before we do. Because of the noise ordinance, we can't make a lot of noise before 7 AM, but they will definitely get here early and get as much done as they can. But some of the work will have to be done when we're open. About 8 to 10 weeks.
And we did not choose Reliant Contract Glass just because they have the lowest bid.
Correct, yes, they are someone that SMC has worked with before, and actually they were the ones who did our second floor windows, so.
We're good, responsible, so we actually be able to have the trust that they can do the job. And deal with this.
Yes.
We got lucky on this one.
Mhm.
What happens to all the old glass?
That is a good question. I will ask about
I was
that.
only asking, I don't know if it'd be like, I'm just thinking of like the studio space or something, if recycle or reutilize some of the glass, yeah, like make a mosaic or do something kind of cool with it.
Maybe a
I don't know.
small piece of- because That's a lot of glass.
It is
around.
glass, not all of it,
Yeah.
just a little piece or something,
Yeah,
I don't know,
okay.
like, there could be, I don't know what people do with large pane glass windows, I was just curious, that's a lot of glass.
With our project.
Those panes are really, really large that we have downstairs. They're
Yeah,
Aren't those
really-
like almost original windows?
Yes.
So I
some of
think it
them-
would be really cool to like make almost like a monument to. That was a good idea.
Could be cool, I mean, you guys make the quilt, there could just be, I don't know what you can do with glass, I know it's a little more dangerous of a medium than fabric, but there could be something, whether it's recycling of glass, it could be a cool social media video, like, look at all our glass being recycled and look what it does, I don't know.
Yeah, I will definitely.
We'll do it if it's safe.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Oh,
a
of
big
course.
caveat, yes.
Or they have those rooms, where you can smash, no, I'm just joking.
Sometimes you need those rooms.
Maybe not a library.
No.
I used to study a lot of stuff on the second floor. There's my master's, but early actually, like 9 years, yeah. Well, great. And I know the birds.
Mhm.
Is there anything that we're gonna go?
Yeah, so you'll notice on the second floor, we have the dots on the windows to prevent.
Do they help?
Yeah, they do, actually, there was a
It was
sharp
so sad.
decrease after we put those in. That's not really necessary on the first floor. Most of the windows are behind an overhang, and so it's not reflective in the same way it is up here where the bird flies up and thinks, oh, that's just a tree in my, ahead of me. Downstairs, they would have to fly under and they can then see through because it's not reflecting. No, that's a great question,
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
Or
Are there
discovered it.
Are there any plans to have, let me see, branding, one of the windows with a wrap or something on it with like this Skokie, like logo or something really cool, so it's not just a plain window with dots, I mean, the dots are cool, or just a plain window, but maybe one of them, one pane or two panes are like wrapped with something specific to the library.
On the, are you thinking of like on LinkedIn?
Like on that, yeah, over there.
There's something that like you can see from the outside when you're driving past that lets folks know this is Skokie Public Library, that's.
Like when you see the bookmobile.
Yeah.
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 I don't think we've ever talked about that, but I love that idea.
Yeah.
I do too.
It's been kind of nice this summer to drive by the teen room and see all the summer reading. There's a flamingo and a beach ball and things cutouts that they put in the window.
Not
So-
covering all the windows.
Not
I
right,
get what
right.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Maybe like a little bar across. the-
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
because we've struggled with, not struggled, maybe that's too strong a statement, but, as you know, like when people are on open, there is no big sign that says Skokie Public Library. It's just a smaller sign on the east side and then there's another sign.
Mhm.
So they're not really that visible, so I kind of like that idea.
Yeah.
But that still lets the light
No, of
Yes,
course,
absolutely.
on the dark.
Yes.
Not black, yeah, you know, cover it. but-
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I made a note. We'll talk about that.
do I hear a motion to approve the first floor with the replacement project with the recommended bid budget presented by SMC for a total cost of $626,300. Discussion.
Yes.
Blanking out, sorry.
Very,
Yes, I vote yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Michelle, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And it's yes for me too. I just want to remind you.
Thank you.
And the motion passes. So next item on the agenda is the approval of the revised administrative section plan.
Pretty small change, honestly. Most of the plan is intact, the way it was before, just some title changes and also the addition of the director of services as backups essentially to the deputy director in the case of. It was part of, the overall policy review and something. I don't think that's an indication that anything's wrong with me or anything, in case you were wondering, but, yeah. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, but otherwise.
I did, just when, on page 1 of this, after, naming each of the different roles, the director roles, it says this acting executive director is new to their position and any experience with the library less than 1 year. The board may decide to appoint one of that. So we're saying that if it was more than 1 year that this executive director has, the acting executive director has been there, that we would not be able to reassign that role.
I wouldn't say that. Ultimately, the board can do whatever it wants. This is more of a plan to help the board in that situation, not have to, like, start from scratch, essentially. So if the board, it considers this position and assesses that, one of the steps is not what exactly it wants to do,
Right.
it can adjust. There's something like binding the board. And at the end of the day, this is a board approved plan, so you can just change the plan. Ultimately, it's powers and the boards handle the situation.
And then was there anybody else in this? So like, if we notify, for example, the village of Skokie, they would then notify, for example, the police department. Correct. I would assume, I guess, or is that something that we need to be?
Like in terms of, in the sense of like community partners and
Yes.
people. Yeah, I think that would happen very easily. I mean, between
We'd have to like list
the
out.
administrative coordinator, Susie, and our entire staff, like we would get the word out, obviously, that there's some change. As needed, is temporary or a permanent.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the review of revised board bylaws.
So if you recall last month, we, like, where we talked about the vision to you with the different areas that are not necessarily required to be in the bylaws, but it would be as a document if they were included. So what you have before you is something that paired with the consultation. board would like to move forward with this revision, it would just need to do it. Because part of the bylaws state that you can't change the bylaws in the same meeting. Any questions? I'm happy to, section. Yeah.
I have a question, to section 2. Each trustee must be a resident of the village of Skokie. I'm wondering about the folks that are technically residents of Evanston. How that may be interpreted by board members after us who know that that's inclusive of it. Is it a way to either add some language that says they must be, I don't know, a constituent that is serviced by the Skokie Public Library as opposed to the village of Skokie?
Yeah,
Because,
with that kind of.
yeah, there is a part of our constituency who are not technically, like on their mailing address, it doesn't say village of Skokie, it says Evanston, Illinois. Is it 60203? That's the Evanston zip code that's included. So I just want to be clear that like when we're no longer on the board, years down the line, there isn't someone who is restricted for running for position here because of this language.
And so I think that's a great point. You can definitely, in the final version presented in August, if the board doesn't go through with it, just get the right phrasing on there.
If I may, in our resource selection policy, we specify the zip codes. So we specify the 3 zip codes.
So you're saying
I
must
think we
live
should
in.
wait-
yeah,
we'll work with the attorney
Yeah.
anyway, because we want to make sure that it's
Yeah.
not the statute. That might be a way to, maybe there's kind of a parenthetical words.
Yeah, okay.
What necessary expenses would we have in Article 2, Section 5?
So if, say, the board, a board member goes to a library conference in their role as a trustee, airfare or lodging or, might be reimbursed, but that's not compensation, so.
I'm just impressed that this, we talked about it last meeting and now it's ready.
Oh, well, don't be too impressed, I think this was like a year. I've been talking about doing this for a year, so I should probably not admit that.
I have 2 questions. In Article 2, Section 10, about the approval of the minutes within 30 days of the meeting or subsequent regular meeting, whichever is sooner. Should we, yeah.
There are 2 sections too.
Yeah, I'm realizing that the article numbering is just. We'll clean that up. Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 is for meetings. Is that section you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, that, what was your question?
I think I emailed about it because I was confused about like the
It
timing.
used to say whichever is sooner, which is what our attorney provided. But then the statute says whichever is later. Honestly, I think that it either could work, but it's just like how you read the phrasing with it. But we decided to just go with whichever is later because that's literally what it says in the statute. So basically what that means is if the approval of minutes happens at the next regular meeting, we're fine, right? So whether it's before.
That was my concern, because sometimes there's a few times per year where we're not always there on like the exact like second or whatever, like the Wednesday of the second week of the month. And if it's later, I wanted to make sure we were covered if it was
Right.
outside of the 30
Right,
days.
right.
Okay.
So whichever, however you say whichever sooner or later, like there's a potential for confusion. We just stuck with whatever is in the statute and then, but the attorney is okay with this interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted
We
to
know
double
what
check
we're
that, because I was like, I read that and I had to read it a couple of
Yeah.
times to make sure, like,
It
okay,
just means that we don't have to like have a special meeting within 30 days to.
Yeah, that was-
to approve the meeting
Yes,
minutes.
yes. Okay, cool.
Other questions? Answer one. So if there are no other questions, we can work on that phasing of the article numbering and we'll take a. Right. Bring it to Michelle, to the board for minutes.
So the next item on the agenda is closed session pursuant to ILCS 120-2C1. Here, a motion to go into